Right. Well, I'm not accustomed to doing this from home. Yeah, blue screen. That's fine. It's not the horrible blue screen that you get on a Microsoft Air. Unfortunately, this is my screen. Better than the sky in Nottingham. Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So my little agenda is I'm just going to talk you through. I've got my chat box right in front of my screen now. I can't get rid of it. It's going really well, isn't it, today? Talk about having an off day. Let me see if I can close that without. Oh dear, the mouse has disappeared while I've got the screen share on. That's it. Right. Okay, brilliant. Now, I will do my best to check the chat box, but because I've only got the one screen here, it hides the chat box when the slides are up. So a little bit later on, I'll flick to the chat box to make sure that I'm not missing any comments or questions. Okay, so my agenda, ultimately, I want to put a case forward for why the profession is so important right now. You know, that I'm hearing more and more people feeling that they're undervaluing themselves, that they're sort of losing confidence in what being an accountant means. And I think this is, to a large extent, come because, you know, business owners aren't really appreciating and valuing what a lot of accountants out there are doing for them now. The prices are being negotiated down. They're seeing it much more a commodity. So I'd like to put a case forward for why I believe that now is an amazing time for accountants. And I think it's being in the profession is something to be incredibly proud of. I'm going to take you through a proven model that really utilizes your natural skills with numbers. Lots of people talk about, you know, advisory. Is that the best place for an accountant to be? And I think there are lots of forms of business advice and coaching and consulting. What I want to take you through is something that really naturally utilizes your skills with numbers, you know, those same skills that made you become an accountant in the first place, and how you can apply that to helping the businesses that you work with become stronger in many different areas. And as a consequence, you get really well rewarded for that as well. An opportunity to better understand the model that I'm going to take you through. So more on that very shortly, but ultimately, if it's okay with you, just share with you how a brand new course that I've been putting together and tweaking that I'd like to invite you to. And finally, then I will show you, I'll give you an example of the type of conversation that you can have with somebody, the types of strategies that you can raise for discussion, and then each one of those strategies could be a very lengthy discussion, maybe a 2 or 3 hour session in itself. And I'll share with you 7 as we go through this process. Okay, so the first one is my case, and I know some of you will have heard me talk through this before this part, but ultimately I think it is important that it sets the scene. So in terms of the threats facing the profession right now, I see that there are 3. Now, technology is the first one. I don't need to go into too much detail on that one. We are all aware, I've got no doubt, that technology is getting better and better, isn't it? We're surrounded by applications that are just making life easier for accountants, but the perception in business owners is more and more getting towards, well, you know, they're just clicking a button. Therefore, why can they charge me those fees? And they're not really appreciating the continued effort that still goes in on your part. But the reality is that technology is getting better. You know, I often use the analogy that if you know, when I first got into this profession, bank reconciliation was a nightmare, and it was a job that you would delegate to the junior in the office, and that would take them all of that time. Now, you know, it's automatic, isn't it? More recently, cash flow forecasts, you know, that used to be an art on a spreadsheet, and now, to a large extent, you click a button. There might be some tweaking to do, but ultimately, there is just you know, it does a lot of this stuff for you. There are lots of technologies out there now, and we're seeing this in many different areas, aren't we? Just shortcutting bit by bit. It's not necessarily an overnight, suddenly that's replaced. It's just bit by bit these things are coming on. And I think the ramifications that are ultimately that, you know, business owners don't want to pay as much for you to produce this work as maybe they would have in the past. The second challenge that I've got on here really builds on that, because we live in such a fast-paced world now that actually business owners don't really value what they get back from a set of accounts. The information is very much out of date. I've noticed a few familiar names on this webinar as I've glanced through the list there. And so some of you may remember this was about 2006, maybe 2007. I think it was 2006. I sat on that motorbike. That was actually a cardboard cutout of that ashtray that basically said accounts are as useful as an ashtray on a motorbike. That was all that time ago, and very little has changed. In fact, if anything, it's become even less useful. Annual accounts don't make easy reading. They don't show you how you compare to others in your industry from a business owner's point of view. They don't show the strengths, the weaknesses, scope for improvement, all the things I'm obviously reading from screen. You can probably read it from quicker yourself, but they represent out-of-date data by today's standards. It's just so much out of date these days that it's meaningless data for them to a large extent. Yes, it meets the needs of HMRC and Companies House, but not really the client's needs. And as a result, clients don't want to pay very much for it because they don't value it. And if you've read my book, Putting Excellence into Practice, and by the way, if you haven't and you'd like a copy, I'm more than happy to send you a copy out, so put something in the chat box for me. Then in my book, I give the analogy of annual accounts is pretty much like getting your MOT done from a business owner's point of view. It's a necessary evil. They have to have it done. And if they see lots of different prices out there, in their head, it's, well, why would I pay £45 for an MOT when there's one there for £25? All they're doing is ticking off a few boxes, hitting my car with a hammer in a few different places, and they don't really appreciate that there's much more to it than that. The reality is, of course, very different, but they don't necessarily appreciate that. It's their perception that matters, isn't it, at the end of the day? Ramifications are that they're playing accountants off against each other when they're getting multiple quotes. They're saying, well, the accountant up the road will only do it for this. Why can't you do it? Why are you different? And unless you can massively demonstrate why you are different, then it's very difficult to beat those cheap accountants out there, isn't it? And even, again, going back to when I first got involved in the profession, I know that little's changed, hasn't it? The technique for many accountants was to leaf through the previous set of accounts, find out what the previous accountant charged, and undercut them. Now, I've got a little flashy box to say that someone has sent me a message. The trouble is my mouse has disappeared, so I'll just try and pull that up, and if not, then I might have to come onto it when my... got it. Karim, that's fantastic. I will, of course, get you a copy of that book out. If you send me your address, probably just direct to info@abn.co.uk, then we'll sort that out by all means. I'm surprised you haven't got one. Right, okay, so let me move on from this in the interest of time. There are lots of examples of people just saying, the end of accounting and all that lot. I'm not convinced for a single minute that it is the end of accountants, but maybe in the traditional sense of the word, it's certainly got to change and improve, hasn't it? This was a book reviewed by Ron Baker. Not many people have heard of Ron Baker these days. He's still quite well known in America, but about a couple of decades ago, he wrote a lot of books that were very well known within the profession on value pricing. Okay, so that's undervalued. And the last one, HIS syndrome, really stands for head in sand syndrome. And if we learn from this old fable, the frog placed in a hot pan of water would instantly jump out because it's such a hostile environment, but the frog that's placed in the pan of cold water that's then gradually heated doesn't recognize the changes that are happening around it until it's too late. And we've seen that happen so many times in the past, haven't we? The obvious ones are Blockbuster, who were on every single high street, and they didn't really change their model based on how the environment was changing. Yes, they might have gone from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, but they didn't really change their model. Like Netflix, when that came along, brand new startup at the time, it had a very different model. It even offered the opportunity for Blockbuster to buy it. They didn't. They said, no, that our model is people will come out of their house, they will peruse our aisles, and they will take something back with them. Actually, people didn't want to come out of their house. They were quite happy to make their decisions from home, and that's why Blockbuster don't exist. Kodak, the lab technicians in Kodak were the first people to invent the digital camera, but the board of directors of Kodak said, no, we do film. that's all we're going to focus on. And somebody else invented the digital camera subsequently, and Kodak are not a patch on what they used to be. The traditional librarian, used to be the oracle of knowledge when it came to what's that book that talks about this and etc. And the librarian would know exactly what book you meant and where to find it. Now Google does that, and it does it in less than a nanosecond, and the book can be on your Kindle in probably less than a minute following that as well. Now, these four categories really represent, in this pyramid, the types of services that accountants will offer. Now, obviously, within each one of those areas, there are an abundance of services, but what you can see represented in this pyramid is that the lower down there, the wider it gets, the higher volume of customers you need to deal with, because you can't charge much for those services, and that's coming down on a regular basis, isn't it? So compliance speaks for itself. You have to work with a large volume of customers because you can't charge the high fees. That makes you very, very busy, probably working more hours than you'd like to, and not taking home what you probably deserve to as an accountant either. Business services, that incorporates cash flow forecasting, management accounts, those types of services. Business advisory arguably speaks for itself, showing the businesses that you work with, maybe using the numbers in the accounts and then showing them the possibilities for making those better, having meaningful conversations with them, and ultimately listening to the clients and asking them the questions on how can they improve this area in isolation, how can they improve that. And then wealth strategies, that covers things like mergers and acquisitions, pensions, exit strategies, those types of services that actually, yes, you can charge a premium fee for, but unless you specialize in that area, then they're probably far and few between. Now, at the moment, with everything I've talked about, the technology is starting to chip away, and it is a chip away, bit by bit, impact that, on those different types of services. So I mentioned cash flow forecasting. As I said, that used to be a hell of a skill on the part of the accountant on a spreadsheet to a large extent, and maybe there's still some tweaking. I'm not suggesting there isn't, but to a large extent, that's taken away. What else? What next? What else is just going to be chipped away at? There'll always be room for compliance. There'll always be room for these different services, but from under our feet, they're just gradually being chipped away at, aren't they? Now, I firmly believe that accountancy is a noble profession that can make a profound difference, hence the title of this webinar. And there's a massive opportunity out there as well to do exactly that. There are currently 5.7 million businesses in the UK, 99.9% of them SMEs, and you can see the breakdown there as to how they're split. In fact, there's a new one born every day, as they say. There are several new ones born every day. We can see that trend now. Unfortunately, I've not managed to get the same trend data from beyond 2017 yet. Certainly not the last time I looked, it was very recently. But we can see that just looking at that in isolation, the past few years were fairly stable at 350,000 new businesses per year. But then in 2017, it really started to ramp up. Now, I believe that one of the reasons, there are many different reasons come to mind, but one of them is it's never been easier to set up a new business now, because we can do it. I mean, I'm sat in my conservatory right now. There are many people who set up a spare bedroom. All they need is a laptop. They can access anybody in the world to do stuff for them. Once upon a time, you'd set up a business. You'd have to employ someone to do your marketing for you full time. You'd have to employ somebody maybe to do this, to do this, to do this. We can outsource on a very ad hoc basis now. I want a website doing, go make that, give me a fixed price, that's it, it's sorted. And we can tap into people for very different reasons. And so there are lots of these, I think the saying is solopreneurs, but there's lots of these now sprouting up on a regular basis. So lots of opportunity to work with them. But what happens with most people when they set up a business, it's, I'm going to be my own boss, I'm going to do my own thing, I'm going to allocate a certain amount of time to running my business, and that's going to enable me to spend much more time with my family, much more time with my friends, much more time doing stuff that I really enjoy, the hobbies that I love. Maybe it's just out training or whatever it might be, but pursuing those types of interests is good for your health, isn't it? However, as the business consumes more and more of that time, which is usually inevitable, then actually that impacts on their ability to spend time with their family, friends, and on their health. and the business becomes all consuming, doesn't it? And, you know, I'm not just talking about your business owner clients, I'm talking about yourselves as well. In many cases, you're probably going to be working a lot more hours than you'd like to for not as much as you would like to as well. But there's another sad reality as well. Over the 20 years I've certainly been working with accountants, I remember the first time I saw this chart, this is for businesses in general in the UK, and I'm sure many of you will have seen something like this. It hasn't changed one little bit in the past 20 plus years since I last saw it. And I've seen this on a regular basis. The survival rate of businesses is not that great. More than half of them have gone after 5 years. And for me, the key word there is survival, because that's exactly what even the ones that make it past that time are doing. Many of them are struggling with the time. You know, they're spending so much time in the business, they're sacrificing relationships at home, they're missing their kids growing up. It's putting strain on you know, marriages, etc. They're not necessarily generating the personal income that they'd like to, so they're still struggling from that point of view, and they're not enjoying what they're doing. And for me, the purpose of a business is it should work for you, not the other way around. And you should absolutely enjoy it. You should get a buzz out of it. You know, you should be springing up out of bed in the morning thinking, yes, another day at the office, not just waiting for the weekend. So as I say, I just want to reaffirm that I firmly believe that accountancy is a noble profession that can make a profound difference. And I'm going to show you one methodology that you can use with your clients that will help them improve their business and enable you to get much better rewarded as a result of that. But the big challenge is that many accountants, not the people that have tuned into this webinar, but many accountants out there still focus purely on churning out the accounts. They work with that high volume of clients. They're not profitable, so the only model that they can work to is stack them high, sell them cheap, churn them out as quick as they can. They're not really analysing the numbers in those accounts. They're not looking to see if there are strengths and weaknesses compared to others. They're not looking at trend analysis to say these things are getting worse over time or better. They're just seeing everything in isolation, and therefore they miss the flags, the red alerts when people are maybe struggling in different areas, that if they were to analyse them better, they'd be able to have these conversations with them. So for me, I'm not suggesting that an accountant should abandon the compliance section or even abandon the title of accountant, because there's a lot of people I know that are saying, well, I'm just going to drop the accountant word, I'm just going to go in as a coach. And I think there are hundreds of thousands, if not more, of coaches around the UK in itself. And I think being an accountant is much more special. It gives you an upper hand. You've got that air of professionalism, you've got the qualification, you've got the experience, you've worked with lots and lots of different types of industries, and you can bring different approaches, different strategies, different tactics that those different businesses are doing into conversations that you have. So, but ultimately relying on compliance as your core service, I don't think is the way forward. But shifting your core service to be more into the area of advisory, and by the way, we can do your accounts work, that's fine. In fact, that acts as a great springboard for us to be able to help you improve your business, for me is the better way forward. And I think your forward-thinking accountants are doing the stuff that your traditional accountant will do, the service and the support, of course, but they're also looking at strengthening sales and profits, and also strengthening cash flow, business and personal. And the example I'm going to give you later is just, what one method that you can apply with clients, a conversation or a series of conversations that will help them strengthen their profits and sales. So that is still to come in this webinar. Okay, so I'd like to take you through this proven model. Forgive me looking at my watch, I just want to make sure I'm all right for time, because not having two screens really limits what I can see. Okay, so I think we're still good for time. So the proven model then. The model, we introduced this many years ago. It's gradually been modified and refined, but it continues to be an amazing tool for accountants to embrace, to use as a methodology, a proven model that they can talk through their clients with And it in itself then enables them to upsell additional services to clients. And in some cases, you know, they'll sell the whole package in one go. So this visually is represented in the form of a folder. That's not to say it is a paper-based and out-of-date type of thing, but just like you might still leaf through the Argos catalogue, or you'll leaf through a brochure, arguably that just represents the service in that kind of manner. Now, if you glance on the left-hand side there at my bullets, you'll see that I've put a price range there, fee per client, is quite broad. And that's because actually, I'm not trying to dazzle you with numbers here, so I'll just come out straight and say there's only one of the members that we work with that are charging the £25,000 per client fixed fee, and that is his model. He'll just say it's take it or leave it, but it's £25,000 per client. He has a healthy number of clients, so he only works with 20 clients every year. They continue to come back. His churn rate isn't bad at all. And you can do the maths yourself. 20 times 25,000 is a nice income for the practice, and I think he's got, is it 2 or 3 team members? I'm not entirely sure, but that's his preferred model. It's different for different people. Okay, so we call this the numbers. It's the performance measurement and improvement model that, as I say, we introduced a while back, but we continue to refine this, and of course the tools that support it. Now, it's broken down into 9 stages, and each one of those 9 stages basically promotes sub-services that you can then offer to clients, and it just creates a holistic package then of everything that you can do for a client. Well, not everything, but of many services. So I'm going to just talk you through very briefly the 9 steps. So step 1 is understanding what the client really wants from their business. Why did they start the business in the first place? What was the initial sort of flair that they had? Why they want to start it? I mean, it might have been that they were sick to death of their previous employer and thought, I can do this myself. But actually, many people have got an ulterior motive. Maybe they want to make a change in the world, or they had some big aspiration, or it simply was that actually I can do this better myself, and I can work the hours I want to, I can take the holidays I want to, and I can get really well rewarded themselves, but the reality is quite different. So having those types of conversations sort of reignites those dying embers, because quite often people have got fed up of just being stuck in a rut and they've forgotten why. So that's really important. Find out why they started the business. Help them put some goals in place. And you can see that the bits at the bottom there, it says, you know, your goals, your personal balance sheet as well. Helping people understand what's their current net worth like right now. How is the business affecting that? What can be done to the business to affect that as well? And I think, you know, the benefit of being an accountant is that you can help people really be aware of what their personal status looks like in terms of personal wealth, as well as the business. So that's step 1. Step 2 then is, once you've ascertained the goals, help them put together a business plan. Help them put together the forecasts and budgets so that they can see the possibilities. They can see how they're going to then achieve what they want to achieve. And again, they're additional services in themselves. And you'll see this kind of promotes those services to that client in the first place. Monitoring on a regular basis how they're doing. So you've got to know what you want to achieve. You've got to see a plan for getting there, but then you need to track the process on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. And that's best done using, there are many different ways, but we advocate something called the one-page plan. It's I'll show you a screenshot of it in a minute, but it's just one page with key numbers that need to be measured on a regular basis, key numbers that are just vital to achieving those goals. Many people fall into the trap of analysis paralysis. They're looking at so many different things. If the number doesn't have an absolute so what attached to it, so it's less than what it should be, so what? Right, okay, we're going to do something about that, or it's more than what it should be. Maybe that's great, or maybe that's a problem in itself. So if there's a powerful so what attached, then it needs action taking. But there are other things that come into that as well. Obviously, there's management accounts, that speaks for itself. Success driver mapping as well allows to take one of those KPIs that maybe in a one-page plan and break it down into its constituent parts as well. And so that you can look at, in fact, I've got a screenshot for that, so I'll just move on to the next one, come on to it. So this is the one-page plan, and that kind of starts from the bottom up. The bottom is the vision, the mission, the goals. And then next, we've got underlying success drivers. These don't necessarily reflect on a set of accounts. So customer happiness, and it's underlying success because obviously the customer happiness is down. That's going to have an impact later on in that in the results. So if you imagine you've got lead indicators at the bottom, the lead indicators are things that you can maybe do something about very quickly. The lag indicators at the top are that's happened, there's not much we can do about that now apart from maybe try and do something for next time. So if your customer delight's down, you can do something to try and increase that, which is hopefully going to have a better impact going forward. Team happiness, various other things, and the KPIs are different for different people. Success driver mapping, then, as I say, that allows you to break down just one element. So it could be any of those numbers on the one-page plan that you can split right down and say, well, what if we just made a very small change here, and maybe that had a 1% impact here? This is just a tool that allows you to explore that. Okay, we'll just change that a tiny little bit now, 1% here, but actually as that 1% goes through those different areas, you can see that that in itself could have a big impact on the key number at the bottom. So then the next one down then, what if, so if I look at this, 2,000 customers making inquiries, that might be in a year, a month, a week, it doesn't matter. So from those 2,000, how many meetings are being done? So maybe there's a process that can be improved that more of those 2,000 inquiries turn into actual meetings. So if you go from, say, 5 meetings a month to just 6 meetings a month, that's going to have quite an impact, isn't it? So what one thing could you do to maybe increase that by that little bit? And then your quote rate, etc. So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you get the idea, hopefully. The next stage is the annual accounts, and that is, of course, really important. I don't necessarily need to go into that anymore. I don't need to sell to an accountant the importance of annual accounts. They are important. They're just not as valued by clients. But actually, when they form part of this package, then they have their place. And that is stage 4, not necessarily 1 and the only one, but actually the 4th place in this particular model. And then I mentioned earlier, didn't I, that quite often many accountants out there view the accounts just in isolation. They don't look at it compared to previous years. So this is about looking at previous years, not just the main sales figure or the main profit figure, but actually a breakdown of really crucial parts of that. So you can see, well, actually, whilst this has been going up, this one's been going down, and actually later on that could have a detrimental impact. So it just allows you to analyze those. And there are lots of different tools for doing that out there already. It's just about putting them into the package and being able to promote these in a logical way. So the 6th step then is looking at how one client compares to other people in the same industry as them. So we have a piece of software called Benchmark. And what that does is it allows you to input some data for that client, and it will compare them. So whatever it might be, mechanic, hairdresser, you'll select that specific industry. It will show you how they're doing in these different areas compared to everybody else in their industry. And as you can see from this sample one, there's some greens on there. Great, they're doing as well as the majority of the others out there. But compared to others, they're quite weak in some areas, like sales growth in that case, and operating margin. But actually, they're really weak in gross margin. So why? And one of the powerful things that comes from this is the conversation you can have is, how many times have people said to you, well, it's different in my industry. You can't do this in my industry. You can't do that in my industry. It's just the way it is. Well, this is a great way of saying, well, actually, everybody else in your industry is doing it much better. So why don't we explore how you could too? And that really opens those doors to the possibilities. Okay, so this is about value in the business as well, because that's obviously going to have an impact on them. And everything that you do within this process, as well as other things, is going to have an impact on the value. And that's really what people want to do, isn't it? They want to increase the value of that business for exit strategies. etc. So looking at what impact everything's having on them right now, and then a piece of software we've got for value in business as well, shows some of the possibilities that you can apply to the business that will increase its value significantly more. That in itself leads on to extra work, of course, for helping them implement those. Improvement potential then, and this is one of the things I'm going to show you very shortly then. So how can you show a client how you can massively increase their sales and profitabilities in very simple ways? And that's what I'm going to come on to very shortly. And then finally, the ninth step is arguably the most important thing. Every single time you have a meeting with them about any of this stuff, you'll be exploring the goals, the objectives, and having conversations. Ideas will flow from that, and your role really is to put these into the action plan and then hold them accountable. Nag them. Have you done that yet? Because if they don't do it, then it's just been a waste of time conversation, hasn't it? People take action when they're being held accountable. I work with a coach. Lots of great business owners out there work with coaches. The most successful people all work with coaches, and all of those coaches they don't tell them how to run the business. They'll have exploratory chats with them. Have you considered doing this in a different way to the way that you're doing it now? If there was a different way, what would it be? They're not planting ideas, they're just challenging the status quo. They will then write the actions down with them, and then they'll be saying, well, have you done that yet? Because if you don't do that, it's not going to have a positive impact on your business, is it? So your role is to do exactly the same. It's just to challenge the thinking, load down the actions, and you're effectively giving them a prescription, just like when you see the doctor says, here's a prescription, do this, things will get better. It's exactly the same principle. Okay, that's an action plan. I'm sure you don't need to see what an action plan looks like. So that's the numbers folder. That is a model that works, and as I say, more and more accountants now are using this incredibly effectively with their clients. Now, I want to show you, I said I've got an example for you that I'd like to just run through with you, and I hope I'm still okay for time. I think so. I'll probably have to speak a little bit quicker, but I do want to just share with you the opportunity that I mentioned. Now, some of you will have been on the receiving end of some of my emails recently where I've been talking about this. So what I just want to do, I'm going to have to stop my screen share for a minute while for some reason it blocks all of my slides. So I'm guessing now that I've not cut you off because the light's still on, but I can't see my icon. Here we go. Right, I'm just going to check my chat box for a moment because I've not looked at it for a while. So okay, that's cool. Right, yeah, just some of the stuff that I've talked about, and I'd be interested in your thoughts in the chat box as well. So I'm going to invite you just to type into that. But and now I can see it as well. I've talked about a lot of stuff, and there will be some of you listening in here right now thinking, well, I don't really feel confident about delivering something like that. Maybe some of you do feel confident about delivering those types of services, but you're not necessarily being paid for them, or certainly to the extent that you'd like to be. And more and more, there are brand new pieces of software being created that will raise those flags for you automatically. They link with Xero, they link with QuickBooks and various other packages, and they'll raise the warning flags for you that this particular key performance indicator is maybe down compared to the previous month. And these are great tools, but what I'm discovering from the providers of those tools is that their churn rate is incredibly high. And the reason for that is that accountants are buying them. They're thinking, oh, this is fantastic. It's a great way of me delivering advisory. Everyone's banging on saying I need to deliver advisory. But the reality is that when it comes to the crunch, they don't feel confident in having those conversations. Maybe they've not had the training that's involved. But there's a big worry that I don't want to say something that's going to be wrong, or I don't want to do damage. I mean, can you relate to the stuff I'm saying here? Let me just pull up my chat box again. Everything's getting hidden. Does that make sense? I mean, does some of you feel you don't have to have it on all attendees if you want? If you just want to send it to me, that's fine. Just set the thing to all panelists. But is it confidence? Is it training? Or are you delivering powerful business advisory solutions already? and getting paid really well for doing that. So just put something in the chat box that will just let me know that A, you're still there, and that what I'm saying is making sense. So you've said yes. I'm not going to say who, but yeah, thank you there. As I say, I'm not going to name names because you've changed it to all panelists. I'll keep it that way. But one of you has just put yes. So sorry, is that down to, are you already delivering these things? In which case, just write delivering effectively and getting paid really well for it, I suppose. Or, are you looking to improve your confidence or the training? Okay, so that's great. Okay, thank you for that. Yes, that's true as well. It is about balancing the confidence with personal expertise. Okay. You're trying to deliver them, but you're not getting paid for it. Understand. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. As Sam, well, Jeff, you did it to everybody anyway. So yes, we did have a conversation last month. I get you there. Well, that's the other side of it as well. If you're not getting paid for doing this, and I think this is the problem with those the people who are dropping out of the likes of those. Well, I'm not going to name the tools. I don't think that's fair. But the accountants are not able to get paid for it, but they're spending a lot more time on it than they were before, which actually makes what they're doing even less profitable. The other side of it as well is that I think clients appreciate more what they're paying for. So when you're giving away the advice and they're not paying for it, ultimately giving away free advice, people don't really value it anyway, and they don't take therefore as much notice. Okay, let me. What I wanted to do is talk to you about a new training program I've put together. Now I've been gradually piecing it together recently, so it's not the first of its kind, but I would say it's really ready to largely market. So as I say, you may well have been on the receiving end of it. I mean, the stuff I've talked about today so far, if you were able to deliver this, if you had the confidence and you were able to deliver this in a way that you were getting paid really well for it, and you're confident that your clients were absolutely taking this on, would that be something worth adding into your repertoire? Is this something that you'd like to be delivering more of? Just put me a yes or a no in the chat box. Okay, so lots of yeses. That's cool. All right, spot on. Well, look, I'll pull up a website in a minute, but the thing I'm talking about is I mentioned my book earlier, and I think there's only one of you that said you've not got a copy. But as I say, if there are more of you that don't, by all means, I'm happy to send you a copy through. But since the book, I mean, the book, it's been amazing, the feedback I've been getting people on the book. It really has been fantastic. And what I've done is I've put a course together that really represents all of the 7 modules that are described in the book, and it really expands on them and provides people with the much more in-depth training on covering those. It talks about them in much more detail, and people can ask questions and really get a good understanding on. Now, as I say, I have been marketing it. What I'm going to do is just share my screen again with you now. I hate not having 2 screens. Right, share the screen. Okay. So it's called Putting Excellence into Practice Masterclass. In other words, it's the title of the book, and I've created this into the course. So you can see at the top there, right now, and it expires tomorrow, I've got a 50% off early bird offer on there. Now I'll put the link to this into the chat box because I've got another special offer as well. But I just want to go through. Now this is going to be held in March. I'm just flicking through them. You can do this yourself, but the speakers are all practice growth experts. Every single one of us have worked with accountants for around the 2-decade mark as it happens. There's a message from me as well. So if you go onto the site, I recommend that you read through that, because if any of the stuff I say in there resonates, then it's absolutely for you. If it doesn't, then arguably it's not for you. It's as simple as that. We have accountants come in as well to this and just talk about the stuff that they've been doing, the impact it's had on their practice. But ultimately, you'll learn everything that I talk through in the book in much more detail. So there are 3 prices for that at the moment. There's obviously the VIP ticket that you can see on there on the right. And that gives you a whole range of additional bonuses, which I'm going to talk through very shortly. There's the premium ticket. Now that one is genuinely selling quite fast now, since we put this offer on at the beginning of the week. And then the standard one as well. So I think there's something there for everybody, and you'll be able to have a look through which one of these options suits you. You'll see that there are lots of testimonials, examples from people who just talk about how beneficial it's been for them. In my video actually on there, I talk about the fact that I've been described on a regular basis as this is my paraphrased version, awakening the entrepreneurial accountant from within, which is a bit of a mouthful. But so many people have said, you know, I was stuck in the rut, and I never thought I would have this type of thought process where I'm coming up with ideas and I'm setting this up and I'm setting that up, and it's just a massive transformational change. Right, I can see chats appearing in here. Let me just have a quick look. You booked this afternoon. Yes, I did see you had done that, David. So yeah, fantastic on that one. Would it be suited to a trainee accountant? I would have to say no on that one. Now, it's really partner level. And the reason it's partner level is because it's so much strategy involved. By all means, if you want to come along, you're welcome to. The reason I say no and it's partner level is because quite often people go back, they're buzzing with ideas, they want to do this, they want to do that, and the partners are stood there, arms folded, they've not experienced it themselves, and they don't really get what it's about. So that said, I mean, somebody's coming along to it already that's booked 10 places. Because they want to bring along some of their team, obviously not all, because they've got about 40 team members, but they've booked 10 places to come along with their team. And I think if you do that, then, you know, get more of your team along to this, then you're going to get much more benefit from that. Hi, Jamie. I'll let you type out whatever question you're going to do, but just want to acknowledge that I've seen that so far. Right, okay, so my recommendation is visit this, have a look through, listen to the videos, listen to the case studies, and I'm going to give you, let me just read this, forgive me. Yeah, Jamie, just for the benefit of others, I've had a question here. You know, you've just recently gone self-employed. You've got a very small client base at the moment. The 3 prices on there are for the benefit of the people that just want to come along and learn, you know, learn a lot of the stuff there, because, you know, I'm happy and open to share everything that, as I say, that we do there. But is it right for you at this point? I think it's different for everybody. So I've had somebody come along to there and they've had absolutely no clients whatsoever, but they've come away with the knowledge to really set up an accountancy business right from square one. Typically, as I say, the ones that embrace it the best and have had the best return on their time investment, as well as the financial. I mean, the financial is next to nothing. I'm sure you can agree with that, but we recognise that it's the time investment that's the most important thing here. They get the quickest return investment if they're fairly established. So we usually say if you're 100K plus, you've got a lot of clients in there, there's a lot of potential in your clients, then you'll be able to make this stuff happen. So hopefully that's answered your question. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on here because I don't want to miss out on the last part for you. Where is he? Aaron here, you know, this case study, I interviewed him about, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks after he'd been to masterclass, just to find out, you know, what's things like for him. I recommend that you listen to that. He's absolutely buzzing. He's doing so much on there. And you know, absolutely full of beans, energetic, still making stuff happen. So some of these are after the masterclass. In fact, that one there as well, if you listen to that, well, listen to them all. I want to put them there if I didn't want you to listen to. Anyway, just very briefly, the VIP one, I've got some extra goodies in here now. So there's the opportunity to have a one-to-one with me, and that can either be before or after, probably not during. I'm not going to have the opportunity for during. You can dine with the speakers. So because, I mean, there are a lot more people that have already booked a ticket than previously. So what we've said is We'll make anyone who goes for the VIP ticket, they can dine with the speakers. That can be a round table type of discussion. You can pick our brains and things like that on there. The Excellence Blueprint model as well. I've not talked about Excellence, but that is research based across the whole length and breadth of the UK. 1 to 3 partner firms. What are they doing incredibly well? And then we've taken those standards and we've put them all together into a blueprint that will enable you to create an amazing practice. And I talk about it in the book. And Michael Hem, you know, the comment, I don't know how well you can see that, but he just said that the blueprint was brilliant for him, enabled him to grow a massive, an amazing practice. The secrets to success videos as well. So some of those interviews that I talked to you about were videoed, and people are openly sharing what they're doing, how they've done it, and it's just pure gold. So I highly recommend that. Now, I'll not talk about that part anymore. I'm going to load up my slides and continue. But I suppose my final comment in there is that it's, you know, you're just about to go into your tax return season. Things are going to get really busy for you. And now isn't really the best opportunity for you to start focusing on growing your business and doing things like that. If you've got tax return nailed, then great. But March is a great opportunity then to come along to something like this. Aaron talks about, you know, for him, it was lifelong business skills that are going to serve him for, as I say, certainly for the rest of his working life. So I highly recommend it. Now, I've got a free special offer. If you buy the premium ticket, that was the middle option. If you buy that before 5 today, I will give you a free upgrade to the VIP. So that's that offer. Now, I've just said I'll put the link in here and I haven't. So let me just do that now for you. Just going to grab that, put that into here. Now, what I'm going to let you do, I'm going to put this in the chat box. My recommendation is click that, even if you save it until after the thing. Click it now because it'll disappear when the session ends. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is continue this presentation. But feel free to click that if you're ready to get that ticket, by all means. But then you've got until 5 p.m. Anyone who buys that ticket before 5 p.m., the middle option, I will give a free upgrade to. The best time to do anything, I think, is now, isn't it? So I'm going to assume that you can see that screen again. It's confirmed that my screen's been shared. So let me continue now with this example because I'm very conscious of time. I talked, didn't I, about, you know, we need to know where somebody's been. We need to know where they are now. We need to know where they want to be. And so if we were to look at a typical business and say, let's say for the past few years, it's been gradually on the increase, that's great. A conventional type of forecast might project that going forward, similar type of path. I'm being optimistic here. The environment's changing, technology's changing, there's new competition coming out on a regular basis. Thank you for that, Jeff, much appreciated, and thank you for making it so that all people can read that as well. Wonderful endorsement, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so let's take this optimistic view of that. Now, in order to grow a business, most people just look at one number there in isolation and think, well, I need to increase the sales. Greater sales, less costs is going to be better profitability. But actually, just looking at sales in itself, that can be broken down into 7 key sales growth drivers. And what I'm going to do now is very quickly give you an idea as to how you can help a business owner improve just a very small percentage each one of those, so that overall it has a massive impact on their business. And I'm doing this using this sort of visual representation because it just it gives you that sort of idea as to what you can do, rather than me punching numbers in and tweaking it. Just a visual representation. The first one there was pricing. Now, before I start going into any pricing psychology and all of that lot, one of the big inhibitors for anybody charging more for their services is that they represent themselves in exactly the same way as their competitors. And accountants are no exception to this. You know, most accountants on their websites, websites just one channel, don't think this is purely about websites. You know, they'll all say we're accountants and business advisors, we're different, we're proactive. We do accounts, we do bookkeeping, we do payroll, we do whatever else it might be, audits. But from a customer's point of view, a client's point of view, they see that accountant saying that, the next one saying that, the next one saying that. It's like that MOT analogy. Well, they're all saying the same thing, but they want to charge different fees. How does that work? So the starting point with that, because ultimately price is the only differentiator, isn't it, is helping people differentiate who they are and why they're different from the competition. And then once you've sufficiently separated yourself and differentiated yourself from the competition, then you can begin to implement value pricing options. So the first thing on that would be, what can you do to massively differentiate yourself? What are your USPs? What are your values? What are your own aspirations? What do you want to achieve for the people that you work with? And write that down in a language that people are going to relate to. Yeah, nice one, David. Okay. So that's just a quick example on pricing. And as I say, there are lots of things you can do on unique selling points and unique value proposition. And these are just exploratory chats. So what is it, Mr. Client, that you do that you firmly believe that you do different from your competition? Well, we do this. Okay, well, let's write that down then. Is it already written down on your website? Well, no, it's not. So let's get that on there. That's item one. What else do you do, Mr. Client? And it's as simple as that, just prompting their thought around that strategy of being different. Okay, so let's say that enables them to increase their prices just a little bit. And I always go through, and you've heard me say this before, probably on webinars if you've been on them. The opening question is, if you were to increase your prices across the board by just 1%, would you scare off all of your clients? Probably not. Would you scare off any of them? Not for 1%. So let's say there's a business turning over £600,000 a year, a 1% increase, £6,000 straight on the bottom line. That's pure profit. That's a family holiday to Disneyland, isn't it? So would you lose clients if you were to raise them by 2%? Probably not. And at some point they'll start to get worried, and then you can start exploring ways to increase the price without losing customers. Anyway, that's the first one. So if we can increase the price just a little bit, what impact might that have on the business going forward? And we can see that that's going to have an impact on the business potential. So the next one here, and I'm very conscious that I'm nearly at my hour that I advertised. Any business, whatever it is, let's say it churns through 100 customers a week, or 100 customers a month, 100 customers a year, or maybe it's like accountants have, it's a recurring fee income. But ultimately, let's take this 100 right now. The bestest and freest, I'm not sure if the grammar works on any of those words, way to grow your client base is the power of referrals, isn't it? And yet so few people ask their existing customers for a referral. So let's say that you did, and you sat down with every single one of your customers, Mr. Client, and just said, really love working with you. I think that your type of business is just right for me, and I've got some capacity right now. I'm just wanting to invite a few more. Who do you know that you could recommend to us that we'd be right for? And let's say 50% of them gave you an introduction, and then you had that conversation, and then 50% of those turned into clients. That was a free. It was a free strategy, and it was just a simple question. That's something you can share with a client, and that in itself is going to help them increase their customer base, isn't it? Just through that one strategy, which is asking for a referral. There are many other strategies that can be discussed, but asking for a referral is one that most people don't do. And of course, bear in mind that that is at the higher fee. So you can see already those two principles combined are going to have a bigger impact. So raising the customer base is going to have an impact on the business potential going forward. Okay, so I've lost my ability to see my. Bear with me. That's it. Okay. So the next one is the conversion rate. Now, I talked about the referrals. Now, your conversion rate is always going to be significantly higher on a warm introduction from somebody. And, from your point of view as well, if you're going to ask for a referral and they give you a name, ask them there and then if they'll send an introductory email to, that prospect with you included, so that you can strike up the conversation straight away. Now, it might be that every business gets a certain amount of cold inquiries, whether somebody's Googled them, found their website, phones up, whatever the method might be. They'll get a number of inquiries, whether that's 100 a day, 100 a week, 100 a month, 100 a year, different for every business, isn't it? So let's say it is at 100, and the current conversion rate for this particular business, let's say, is 1 in 4. That's a fairly good conversion rate, but 1 in 4, so 25% conversion rate. That, of course, by definition means that for every 4 people that they talk to, 1 comes on board, 3 are kind of lost, maybe forever, maybe for another year or so. So what can you do to reduce the amount of people that you're lost that actually made an inquiry? Obviously, you want to increase your conversion rate. It doesn't have to be massive. Nobody's ever going to get 100% conversion rate, otherwise they're too cheap. But if we can increase it just a little bit, then that's going to have a big impact on the business. So a great way of increasing the conversion rate is a simple strategy called reduce the risk. Most people are reluctant to change suppliers because it's going into the unknown a little bit, just like David talked about with the masterclass. It's going into the unknown. It's a bit of a risk. I don't really know what to expect. Can I trust these people? All of those types of questions that come along, isn't there? So reducing the risk, there are a couple of different ways of doing that. One is offering a guarantee. That really demonstrates your confidence in what you do. So offering a guarantee, and guarantees can all be different. Sometimes it's money back. Sometimes it's, you know, if we fail to do this here, we'll do this for you instead. There are lots of different types of guarantees that can put in place, but a guarantee is an incredibly powerful credibility tool. It elicits trust, or it helps, that's for sure. And another option there is to offer a trial. For example, with AVN, and some of you on there may, well, certainly Jeff has experienced the fact that we do a trial and it's guaranteed. So that massively reduces the risk to allow people to test us out in a safe way. So that again, conversations that you can have with your clients about what can they do in their business to maybe just make it better. And it doesn't have to be guarantee or trial. What else can be done to reduce the risk? So then if we can increase that, and just for the benefit of my presentation here, from 1 in 4 to 1 in 3, I mean, it might be 1 in 3 3/4, but even that's going to have an impact, isn't it? Just increasing the conversion rate a little bit is going to add more new customers on. Okay, so we can see again, and we can demonstrate to the client just that little thing is going to have a massive impact on their business potential going forward. How long do your customers stay for? With every business, there's going to be a certain amount of time that a customer will stay. I mentioned hairdressers earlier, so I'll use them again. You know, the preferred supplier before maybe they just move elsewhere for whatever reason. What if you could extend that stay for, you know, half as much again, a quarter as much as again? If you can extend the amount of time a customer stays for, you've not got to keep trying to replace customers. You're adding to your customers when you get those inquiries. So one tip there is to massively improve customer service. That's a strategy, is putting in customer feedback on a regular basis. A lot of people are frightened to death of doing customer feedback surveys because they fear what the answer will be. And yet the most negative ones are the best opportunity, because if you take them on board and demonstrate to those customers that you are acting on that feedback, then that massively improves customer loyalty and they will stay longer. So again, another conversation to have. How much do they spend with you in any one visit? So I'm going to share with you something that I think probably everybody will have experienced at some point. And it's the strategy is called asking the right questions. You go into a McDonald's, you ask for a burger, they will ask you a question, would you like fries with that? If you ask for burger and fries, they'll ask you a question, would you like to make that a meal? If you ask for a meal, they'll say, would you like to go large with that? If you ask for a large meal, they will still ask you another question, would you like a side with that? They've always got a question. That's just a strategy. They've explored what are the possible questions we can ask to just bit by bit upsell somebody. They'll only do that a couple of times. They won't keep going through. They'll just ask a couple probably until you say, no, I'm all right, thank you. We don't feel that we're being sold to. It's a great question to ask. And what they do there is they increase the average spend per customer from their original intention by 88%. That's an amazing strategy that anybody in any business can put in place, isn't it? And it's just an exploratory conversation. What are the questions that you can ask Mr. Client every time you sell this? What are the questions you could ask to say, would you like X with that? Okay. Again, increasing the average spend per customer is going to make a massive difference, isn't it? And some of these are maybe you're raising the price, but not necessarily the amount of additional effort that you need to put into to deal with that as well. How often they come back to you is going to have an impact. So we're probably all accustomed to your loyalty cards and those types of strategies. On the subject of hairdressers, and again, it's an example from my book. Imagine going to get your hair done. I mean, I don't have that problem very often, but even so, I go in probably every couple of weeks to get mine done. Different people, different hairstyles, the frequency will change. But let's say it's you leave the hairdresser looking absolutely fantastic, but 6 weeks later, it's starting to look a little bit like it needs doing. Takes you a week to remember to get around to booking your appointment with the hairdresser, and then it's another week that you've got to wait. So let's say that's been 10 weeks between haircuts. If your hairdresser said to you, look, your hair looks fantastic right now, and I think it probably will do for the next 6 weeks, but why don't we book in for 6 weeks' time now, whilst you're here, to make sure that you continue to have great looking hair? So people are much more likely to turn up for an appointment if it's booked into the diary, and that hairdresser's just increased the frequency per customer by 33%, which multiply that by every single customer is going to raise their revenue significantly, isn't it? And keep the loyalty there as well, because people are much more likely to come back because they've got the appointment in the diary. So again, another conversation. What can you do to increase the number of times people come back? Maybe different businesses that has a different application to. And then the final one is systems. Now, I don't have a slide for systems in this sense. The systems is more about making sure that all of the things I've just talked about, all of the ideas that will flow from those discussions happen consistently. Because quite often it's the business owner that is the one that's doing the selling, predominantly. So if they can systemize that process, make sure that they do it every single time, but also enables them to better delegate that to recruiting a salesperson, or if they've got a sales team, making sure all of their team are doing all of those things consistently. Just like you walk into McDonald's, it doesn't matter who deals with you, even the computer is asking those questions consistently. So that in itself is going to have an even bigger impact on it. And once it's systemized, that adds to the value of the business in itself, because people are much more likely to spend a lot more on a systemized business. So the two products we have for that is, simple stuff that works, which is the one represented on both those sort of iPads, if you like. But the other one's called Business Potential as well. And that takes you through a step-by-step process. Now, I think that's pretty much the end of my slide, so forgive me for running 5 minutes over. Just a quick reminder, if you've not clicked that link about the masterclass, I highly recommend that you come along. I can show you that process in much more detail, but actually there are many, many more as well. So how to run your practice much more profitably, successful, but actually enjoyably, so that you're getting a greater sense of fulfillment from running that practice. Thank you, Jeff, for your fantastic words in there. Really looking forward to seeing you, David, as well. And the link's still visibly on there. Just, if nothing else, click on the link, take a look through. You'll see the big countdown at the top. And as I say, I've added to the time sensitivity on that as well. The prices will go back to normal from 7 p.m. tomorrow, I think it is. But my bonus offer stands to just 5 o'clock. I'm going to leave you at that. I hope you found this session valuable. I'd love a quick comment in the chat box if that's the case. And thank you very much for attending. In fact, I'll tell you what, are there any questions before I just end this? Yeah, Merry Christmas to you, Jeff, and thank you. I shall extend that to the team. No problem, David, and all the best. I'll see you soon. Right, thank you, Kathy. Yep, see you in March. Bang on. All right, spot on. Well, thank you everybody as well. As I say, if you've not clicked the link, grab it now, copy and paste it into your browser, just because as soon as I end this, it'll disappear. So give you another minute or so just to do that. You should get it on email anyway, of course, but right, I shall end the session. All the best, Shavaz. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. Yeah, I hope I explained that well anyway, in terms of, as I say, really, it is partner level, just because of the degree of strategy. Right, stop my screen share. Getting dark in here. Right then, those of you remaining, I shall say bye-bye to. All the best. See you again. One last message, let's have a look. Carol, you've lost me a little bit there. Maybe just all the best, Stuart, and thank you for that feedback. Wonderful. Any more questions, you're more than welcome to email me at shane@avn.co.uk. Oh yes, I can remember, Carol, yes. Yes, I do remember that. Anyway, right, I'm bowing out. All the best, have fun, see you again.